Blog Talk Radio.
Mi chiamo Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit Neye Ujira da Medinde Ojirafo Kwesi Ranehmpata Akan Akwamumain Amaruka Etipi Mu Ojirafo Ujiramain Mu. Greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people, meaning African Black people. Today is Ojira Day, Purification Day. My name is Ojirafo Kwesi Ranehmpata Akan. Ojirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America, within Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I'll say we thank you for tuning in to the broadcast. Once again, we are opening up the chat room. If you have a question or a comment on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. If you have a question or a comment in the chat room, you must log in as a user in the chat room. If you don't have a username, you can sign up for one quickly in Blog Talk so that you can interact in the chat room. And the chat room is just opening up. So we're going to put a couple of links in the chat room right now. And the first link, making an announcement. If you look at that first link, it is the HONHOM link. HONHOM link is Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Ancestral Religious Reversion. As we've mentioned in a couple of previous broadcasts, we have our conference coming up, our Ancestral Religion conference coming up here in Washington, D.C. It is the HONHOM Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Ancestral Religious Reversion conference. We had to make a date change, so instead of March 19th, it will be occurring on March 20th, the very next day. So the conference is from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., still the same time, but the only difference is the date has changed. It will be Awusida or Akwesida, Sunday, March 20th. That is actually the first day of the Festel Tere, which is the quote-unquote beautiful time, meaning in our tradition, that is the first day of spring. That is the spring equinox. So it is March 20th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., the HONHOM conference. We did update the website today with that information. We did update the flyer today, and we also updated the HONHOM page on Facebook. So check that out. We did send out some notifications, so we'll continue to send those out and also continue to check the website, check the web page, because we will continue to add the different speakers who will be speaking. So far, we have the list of 4 presenters. We're going to have about 7 or 8 presenters. So right now we're at 4, and as we confirm more people, then we will post those names on the flyer. So continue to check the page so you can see all of the updates. But we did just update that information as far as the date change today. So just a few hours ago, so that information is up. Now, for individuals who are new to the broadcast, we have 3 broadcasts on a weekly basis. We have Akanfo Nananom, Ancient Authentic Akan Ancestral Religion on Joda Monday night. And we deal specifically with the Akan expression of ancestral religion. Number 1, because we are Akan. Number 2, because of the misinformation that is propagated by individuals regarding Akan religion, ancestral religion, Akan cosmology, philosophy, the nature of the deities, the Abosom, the nature of the Nananom Nsamanfo, the ancestresses and ancestors, the nature of the Abayifo, the nature of Nyamewa and Nyame, Nyokumpon and Nyokuntone, and the various forces in creation and so forth. Misinformation coming from individuals in the Western Hemisphere, misinformation coming from Akan people on the continent who have been infected with white culture, pseudo-religion, white philosophy in general, and that infection has crept into their presentation of the culture over the past 100 to 200 years. So therefore, people get misinformation coming from individuals who are on the continent, in the Ivory Coast, in Ghana, who are talking about the tradition and initiating people into the tradition, quote unquote, but misinforming people. So we talk about ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion, dealing with our ancient ancestry as Akan people, going from ancient Kanat, which is a title of ancient Nubia. We migrated to the western part of the continent and reestablished the ancient empire of Kanat. After the fall of Kemet, that ancient empire of Kanat in West Afuraitkaitnit is now called the ancient empire of Ghana, that comes from Kana, the title for ancient Kanat, the Kanat land, the Kanit land, the Akan land in south of ancient Kemet. And then some of our people, about 1,000 years after the establishment of the ancient empire, about 1,000 years ago, after the establishment of the empire, and it was strong going for over 1,000 years because of invasions, some of our people migrated from ancient Kanat or Ghana to the forest belt regions, the savanna regions, in today's Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, and the Republic of Ghana, and reestablished Akan civilization in the region. And then a few hundred years after that, some of our people were forced into the Western Hemisphere during the Musuo Ketie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. And this is how we ended up in North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during that period. But we carried our Akan ancestral religious practices with us in the form of hoodoo in North America, Obia in Jamaica, Winti in South America, Suriname, and various other forms of the ancestral religious tradition wherever we ended up in the Western Hemisphere. We were empowered by our ancestral religious practices, by the Abosun and guided by the Nananom Nsamanfo, powered and guided by the deities and ancestral spirits of our blood circles, who waged war against the whites and their offspring and bring an end to enslavement in the Western Hemisphere. It was the wars that we waged against the whites and their offspring, massacring them for decades, the end of enslavement in the Western Hemisphere. So we deal with that on Monday night, and we go into detail about cosmology and so forth. On, of course, Abinada Tuesday nights, we have ODWIRA, which we're going to get into, purification. On Wednesday nights, Awukuda or Akuada, we have Egua, Marketplace Day, where we showcase Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit businesses, organizations, and institutions, those who are serving our community in a positive capacity and who maintain their ancestral religious values in the process and who are informed by their ancestral religious values as they serve the community in a positive capacity. So we've had a number of individuals come on. When you go to the HONHOM Economic Development Model page, you'll see a list of the various organizations, institutions, businesses who have come onto the show, and that list is growing. We have published the HONHOM Economic Development Model, which is a model of economic development rooted in our ancestral religious values, a holistic approach to economic development in our community. You can download that model from the HONHOM Economic Development Model page. We'll put that link in the chat room as well. HONHOM is OKOM for those who are on the phone. You can see it on our website. You can download that model. You can also download the links to the links to the businesses, organizations, and institutions that we've been interviewing and supporting as a community. The links to their websites are there. The links to all of their interviews that they did with us are also there on that page. We are in the HONHOM Economic Development Model. We employ the strategy which is to starve the beast and feed the frog. That means every week you make an assessment on what funds you would have potentially wasted with the whites and their offspring, and you starve the beast and feed the frog. You reallocate those funds away from those white businesses and direct them to the business, organization, or institution of the week. We are targeting one black business, organization, or institution per week for 52 weeks for optimal capital infusion, so that when we target one per week, when one person takes $10 or $15 they would have wasted, like Walmart or Target or Starbucks or wherever you would have wasted that $10 or $15 on some product, you starve the beast and feed the frog. You take that $10 or $15 and reallocate it to the business of the week. When you have 1,000 people engaged in that process, then we are targeting $10,000 to $15,000 for an Afuraitkaitnit business, organization, or institution in the course of 1 week. That is optimal capital infusion. that an infusion of $10,000 to $15,000 allows them to expand their products and services to us. So we don't have to receive those products and services from our enemies, the whites and their offspring. We can receive them from the business. It allows them to hire black people immediately within the business so they can begin to work instantly and perpetually. It's a win-win situation for our people. If we do not engage the process, then by default we leave the $10,000 to $15,000 in the hands of our absolute enemies, the whites and their offspring, and that allows them to hire their people and their businesses, expand their product lines, serve their people, enrich their people, and so forth. Whether it's white Europeans, white Americans, white Asians, white Arabs, white Hindus, white Hispanics, white Latinos, white pseudo-Native Americans, other white Asians, and so forth, non-black people, the whites and their offspring, spirits of disorder, are absolute enemies without exception. We are financing our own oppression where we do not starve the beast and feed the pride. So we have supported a number of businesses. We started that process last year in February, supporting a business per week as a community. So we want to continue that process. So when you look on the page again, you'll see the list of businesses, and that list is growing. Now, on tonight's Benada Tuesday night, we have ODWIRA. ODWIRA means purification in the Akan language. It also means a celebration of purification. So, for example, the New Year celebration is called ODWIRA by many Akan folk, which occurs around August, September, October. The date shifts on the continent around that time. Here in the Western Hemisphere, Akwamu Mine, Amarukai Tifimu, the Akwamu Nation in North America, we celebrate our ODWIRA celebration, our 7-day ODWIRA New Year celebration in September. We have a fixed date. The first day of our New Year is always the first full day of the Atem or Atemet equinox, so-called fall equinox, which is either September 22nd or September 23rd. And then we count the 6 days prior to that. And then the 7th day is always the equinox, and that is the first day of our New Year. That means our New Year began this past September 23rd. That was our New Year's Day. That was the first day of 13,016. Of course, we do not track time based on a fictional cartoon character who never existed, Jesus or Muhammad or any of these other fictional cartoon characters who never in any race or in any form whatsoever. So this is 13,016. We are in the midst of the Afuraitkaitnit, the great year cycle, a 26,000-year astronomical cycle, of course, that can be quantified. We're in the midst of that cycle since the beginning of the years with 13,000. So ODWIRA means purification. It also means a celebration of purification. But this is not just an Akan term. Of course, we show in the Medutu, the hieroglyphs of ancient Kemet, in the language. The term Jira means purification. In the ancient language, it also means a celebration of a ceremony of purification. Of course, we continued that celebration of that ceremony of purification in the Akan culture, and it's still called ODWIRA, and still a 7-day celebration, our New Year celebration. It is a time for purification, the end of the harvest cycle, the beginning of the seeding cycle, the end of one cycle, the beginning of another. So when we talk about ODWIRA, this is what we're talking about. We deal with Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Ancestral Religion, Nananom. No matter what form it takes, not just the Akan expression, but whatever form it takes, wherever Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people or African black people exist in the world, whether we're on the continent, Akan people, Maasai people, Chokwe people, Twa people, Khoikhoi people, San people, Inca, Nuer people, Hula, Ewe, Fong, Fang, Wolof, whoever we are on the continent, we have a fundamental structure that we adhere to, the Great Mother and the Great Father. We align with them through the agency of the deities, the goddesses and gods, the Abosom, the Orisha, Voodoo, and so forth, and the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, the Nananom Nsamanfo, the Egungun, the Kubito, and so forth. Wherever we are on the continent, wherever we are in the world, our people maintained our ancestral religious practices when we were forced to migrate to the Western Hemisphere. We carry our ancestral religion in our blood circle. So we're not dependent upon anyone outside of our blood circles to give us our ancestral religion. We are assigned Abosom, assigned Orisha, assigned Vodou, pre-incarnation by Nyamewa, Nyame, Amenet, Amen, the Supreme Being, assigned these forces in nature that guide us, that we are children of, assigned to our spirits before we enter our mother's womb. We're assigned to a specific ancestral clan before we enter our mother's womb. And those divinities and those ancestresses and ancestors come into the world with us, meaning we are born with a culture. So all we need to do is reconnect with the culture we are born with. Reconnect with the Abosom that govern our head and govern our patric clans and matric clans. Reconnect with our direct blood ancestresses and ancestors who have been with us since we have been alive in this Western Hemisphere, since before we even entered the womb. So we're not dependent on anyone outside of our blood circles, outside of our locale for our ancestral religious practice. So we talk about ancestral religion. It's the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. Through ritual, we incorporate those deeds and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to realign ourselves and restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions, and thus realign ourselves with order. So the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance are the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion, of Nananom, which is our general term for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion, wherever we exist in the world. ODWIRA, purification, operationalizes Nananom. Purification operationalizes our ritual practice of incorporating law and restoring balance. And therefore, when we engage that process on a consistent basis, we seek to align every thought, every intention, and every action, every moment of every day with divine order. That is our responsibility as adults. This is how ancestral religion impacts every aspect of our lives. And this is why we deal with the subject tonight, AKYISAN, HONHOM, Ancestral Religion and Effective Reformation. We want to talk about the effectiveness of ancestral religion and ancestral religious reversion in transforming and reforming our people wherever they exist in the world. The transformative and reformative power of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion is born of its essence, as we said, which is the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. As we say in the Patah Sasatem, ancestral religion is the ritual explication of truth, and thus aligns us and realigns us with divine order in every thought, intention, and action every moment of every day. We're aligning with reality, with truth, every moment of every day. The precedent set by our Nananom Nsamanfo, our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, is effectively employed, and is employed through the practice of ancestral religion. We thus have a track record of life transformation and reformation of our people through Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion, founded upon this precedent and ancestral mandate. When we talk about a track record of transformation and reformation rooted in ancestral religious values. For example, when we published the Kukutuntun, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, when we released that in 13,002, so-called 2002, that has transformed the minds of hundreds of thousands of our people, proving that Jesus never existed, Moses never existed, Yeshua ben Pandera never existed, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, all these various characters, fictional cartoon characters, Muhammad, Allah, Yahweh, Buddha, Brahman, all of these fictional cartoon characters never existed of any form or any race whatsoever. We proved that conclusively in the Kukutuntun. That frees the mind of our people, frees the spirit of our people. We gave the proper definition etymology, and cosmological foundation for our identity as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. And we were the first to put that information forward in detail, black scholar or white scholar, showing that the Ka is the raised land, the Ka'et is the raised land, the first primordial mound. And with Afura and Afuraiet, the creator and creatress, move through the first primordial mound, then that mound becomes the Ka of Afura, Afuraka, Afuraitkai. Of course, this is the origin of the term African information. We published that book as well, separate from the Kukuntum as well, with more detail. We show the relationship between the Ka, the Ka'et, meaning the raised land, as well as the Ka, the Ka'et, meaning the soul, the divine consciousness, the divinity dwelling in the head. We were the first to put that information forward, first to uncover and recover that information and put that information forward, so our people can realign themselves with reality, with who they are, with their relationship to Ra and Ra'et, their relationship to Ma'ah, the male divinity Ma'ah, and the female divinity Ma'at, the reestablishment of that balance of Amen and Amenet, Ra and Ra'et, Ka and Ka'et, Hehu and Hehu, Nun and Nunet, and so forth. So we put that information out to realign ourselves, recalibrate ourselves in harmony with divine order, showing these fictional cartoon characters never exist. So our people, once they get in alignment with order simply by listening to the Kukutuntum in one listen, transform their thought, it transforms their behavior, transforms their intentions, of course. So we have individuals who are smoking marijuana, stop smoking cigarettes, stop smoking cigars, stop drinking alcohol, stop abusing their bodies and so forth from one listen of the Kukutuntum. Of course, we also have the Akuma Sa substance abuse abstinence method rooted in our ancestral religious practices, the Kum ritual method, which incorporates the Kukutuntum, the Ubin Sheng, the Wabo Jira, and the Mpaibo. That Kum method, the foundational piece of that method, starts off with the Kukutuntum, listening to the Kukutuntum at least once. And then there's a ritual method where the person engages their own Krawa, their Ka, their Ka'et, the soul, the divine consciousness, ritually in a 21-day process to overcome substance abuse addiction. But even before, typically before the person goes through the entire 21 days, they end up having that desire snatched up out of them by the Nsamanfo, the ancestresses and ancestors of their blood circle, by the Abosom, who are connected to them before they even go through the entire process. Very often, just from one listen of the Kukutuntum, one reading of our article, for example, on the idiocy of rationalizing marijuana use and its relationship to Abatum and how it destroys, attacks our Abatum or melon, and also makes us receptive spiritually to discarnate, wayward, criminal-type spirits, negative-type spirits, discarnate relatives and non-relatives. We've had many, many people communicate directly with us before they even communicated with us for the first time. They got the information, transformed their lives, overcame the addictions, and then contacted us and told us their story. Then, of course, we had individuals who found out about the Akumasa and the Kum ritual method to overcome addiction, and they contacted us for the information. We sent the information out, and then they would respond later saying, I overcame my addiction. But even for those who had not contacted us first, they just came across the information online, wherever they were in the country or the world, downloaded the information, listened to the information, and were transformed right where they are, right at that moment. Our ancestral religious practices have the capacity to transform and reform our people right where they are right now, not dependent on having to come in contact physically with us, not dependent on having to join a particular organization and so forth, not dependent on a physical edifice, a physical space, a physical institution, even though we are establishing a physical space for our activities, but it's not dependent on that. That just adds, gives a greater capacity for us to expand our services and expand our class offerings and so forth. But when we talk about transformation, reformation, ancestral religious practice has the capacity to transform and reform our people right where they are, right now, wherever they exist in the world. That's the transformative and repower of our ancestral religious practice. You have individuals talking about all the different things that they do or what they are quote-unquote doing, but can they transform people around the world who they have not met simply by releasing the sound vibrations, releasing the information transmitted directly by the Nananom Nsamanfo through them as a vessel? Can they transform the people right where they are right now and totally reorient the direction of their lives, and the trajectory of their lives moves towards a harmonious trajectory, away from disorder? Can you transform them right where they are right now? That's the transformative and reformative power of ancestral religion. AKYISAN, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Ancestral Religious Reversion. We did the broadcast on reversionalism and self-reversionalism. When someone becomes self-reversionalized, they revert back to their pristine essence through ancestral religion. Then they transform their thoughts, intentions, and actions, and reform their thoughts, intentions, and actions back to normal, back to alignment with order, transforming the way they deal with themselves. When they recognize as an Afurakani man, you're an emanation of Amen. An Afuraitkaitnit woman, you're an emanation of Amenet. When you recognize that in reality, because you communicate directly with Amen and Amenet and receive those directions, those instructions, then you recognize the reality through experience that you are a vessel for that divine order to manifest. And when you have that experience, it's not abstract. So you have no inclination towards polluting your physical vessel any longer. You're disinclined from such behavior, from such thoughts, from such intention. So you begin to remove all of the pollution, any kind of addictive substances. You have no desire whatsoever. You say you have reversed your polarity now. You have returned it to reality. So now you repulse anything that will pollute your body, that will cause you to become addicted to a specific substance. So you're repulsed by that and you repel it. You also transform your diet. You have a natural inclination towards consuming that which will nourish and fuel you in a harmonious fashion. You transform what you consume mentally and spiritually. You have a repulsion for disordered thoughts, intentions, and actions and behaviors. Whether it's interfacing with individuals who are dealing with criminality or pure negativity, ignorance, self-destructive activity, you have a repulsion for that. You fall back from that. You recoil from that. You only have an inclination towards harmonious behavior and a disinclination away from that kind of nonsense. Your relationship with yourself internally, physically, and spiritually is transformed. It is reformed. Externally, you don't put your physical body in position to be engaged in self-destructive activity, whether it's any kind of extracurricular activities, promiscuity, whatever it is. You don't put your physical body externally in a position that would defile your physical body, just like you have already developed that disinclination internally to not defile your body internally. That's transforming behavior. When you interact with your spouse or with your significant other before you become married, or you interact with your children, or interact with your family members, or interact with your peers, interact with the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community, that interaction, that interfacing changes, is transformed and reformed because you only seek to align your thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. That is transformation and reformation brought about by ancestral religious reversion. Purification, Jida, operationalizes that process. So through attuning to simply listening to the Kukutuntum, somebody reading the Uben Shang, one of our publications, other publications, or reading the Kokoba, or reading the Anidaho publication, or whatever of the 17 books, or the many 70-plus articles we put forward, or the broadcast that we put forward, one listen, one reading of a portion of the document stimulates the person's spirit to begin to realign with their own ka or kayak. It opens their mind to listen to their own ancestresses and ancestors who have been trying to communicate with them all along, but now they have an opening because that opening was forged wide open through receptivity to ancestral culture and religion. The abosom who are connected to them can feed them that information and empower them because now they're receptive to the abosom who governs. The Nsamanfo can feed them that information, give them that guidance because they are now receptive to that guidance. They were ignoring it in the past. But because they listened to what we put forward, embraced ancestral religion, then they made themselves receptive to that which would have been aligning them with order all along. That transformed them individually, but also the relationships that they have with one another, with their people. And therefore, once they reform themselves, then they connect with other individuals who have reformed themselves as well and are reforming themselves, form collective, and out of those collectives, based on their energy complexes, they're naturally inclined towards different kinds of behaviors, sets of activities that support a mindset to nation building, support methods of food production and preservation, agricultural science. So people are naturally inclined towards that, and the abosom, the deities that govern them. People are naturally inclined towards the abosom who govern healing, and they naturally move in that direction. People are naturally inclined towards the divinities that govern the fire within the core of earth and the structural aspects of earth, and they're inclined towards engineering. Other people are naturally inclined towards textile. Other people are naturally inclined towards a military structure, educational institutions, whatever it is, because they have reformed themselves. We're talking about reaching our people right where they are right now effectively. And we have a track record of having established that kind of reformation and transformation. And anybody who's engaged in ancestral religious reversion, returning to their primordial essence, they have the same kind of track record. They can give you various examples of not only how they have reformed themselves, self-reversionalization, but how they have impacted those in their community, their immediate community, but also people they have reached out to and connected with or have impacted, even if they didn't consciously seek to impact those individuals. They simply became an example, and the people began to oscillate at the same frequency. Effective reformation. So we're going to talk about the nature of that reformation, the nature of that illumination that transforms and reforms the spirit of our people. This is why we're talking about AKYISAN ne HONHOM. The term HONHOM is a term that's a reduplicate of ehun in the Akan language. That ehun in the Akan language is the same in ancient Kemet. So when you look at the symbol, the image that we use for the broadcast, you see the image of that crested hobbley bird. The crested hobbley bird, so-called ibis, is the determinative symbol and sometimes simply the symbol, simply the medu for the term aku or eku in ancient Kemet. What does that term mean? We did a broadcast, an entire broadcast showing that the eku in ancient Kemet is the ehun or ehun in the Akan language. So we don't have to go through the entire people. We want to talk about the functionality of the eku within the spirit body, within the individual, and how it's related to effectiveness with regard to ancestral religious reformation, transforming people right where they are right now, how effective we can be reaching out, utilizing even Anansi, Kweku Anansi's or Awuku Anansi's web. The World Wide Web is Kweku Anansi's web. You look at Anansi, he's the great fighter in the Akan tradition. He's the divine messenger. He's also the trickster. He also governs the planet Awuku or Mercury. He also governs the desert. He is Set in ancient Kemet. And of course, Set is the trickster. Set is the messenger. Set governs the planet so-called Mercury, Set, Sobek, and Set also governs the desert. So the same divinity that governs the desert, the planet Mercury, the trickster, and the messenger. In ancient Kemet is the same deity that governs the planet Mercury, that governs the desert, the trickster, and the messenger. In Akan is the same divinity. Anansi. Awuku Anansi. Also called Awuraku. Awuraku means master or great one. Awura Aku. And of course, a title of Set in ancient Kemet is Awur Hekau, which means the great one of divine words, ritual incantation. That title, Awur Aku, or Awur Hekau in ancient Kemet, is Awuraku, which is a title of Anansi in Akan. And of course, Awurakua in Akan is the title of Akua, Nebuchadnezzar in Akan, and that's Awur Hekau, the great female divinity of divine words, a title of Nebuchadnezzar in ancient Kemet as well. So we dealt with that in different process. But when you look, for example, at Kwaku Anansi, the World Wide Web, he's a great spider that weaves a web of energy. Just like a spider can be found at a windowsill, you come back hours later, the spider has woven an intricately woven web into that empty space. He doesn't have wings, so it's previous he was not able to move within that empty space of the window. But when he weaves the web, he can move to any space within that empty space now. He can master that empty space because the web has been woven. And all of the roads of the web, he's the master of. Sometimes flies and others can get caught on that web. He can go to any place on that web. The great spider, Anansi Kokroko, the great spider in our Akan culture, is the messenger of Nyokumpon and Nyokunton, Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress, who are children of Nyamewa and Nyame, Amenet, Amen, grandchildren of them, who are the supreme being. He weaves a web of energy that permeates creation, the black substance of space, every planet, sun, moon, star, plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, human life, have a place on that worldwide web of energy that permeates space. All created entities have a place on that web. The whites and offspring do not have a place on that web. So he has the capacity to communicate with all of us who are connected on that web, that network of energy. And he can go back and forth, the great spider, between the spirit realm and the physical realm to carry the messages from us to the Abosom, us to the Nsamanfo, us to the Supreme Being, back and forth. So this worldwide web that has been woven through space, the so-called World Wide Web, internet and so forth, we can utilize Anansi's web. And of course, we know, for example, that Dr. Mark Dean created the PC, patented the PC at IBM. You have Emi Agwali, which is Nigerian, who's the father of the internet. You have Dr. Henry Sampson, who's the father of the cell phone. These are black people who founded and established these things that we utilize to communicate. The major things we utilize to communicate, the PC, the World Wide Web, and the cell phone, brought to us by Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people who are tuned in reality to their ancestral memory, attuned to the Abosom that govern them, and established systems that replicate systems in creation. Now, we utilize this system to communicate with our people from the space that we are right now, reaching out to our people thousands of miles away around the world, transforming communities, transforming individuals, families, and communities right where they are right now. That's effectiveness. And all of our people who engage in that process, you have the capacity to be effective in that kind of transformation and reformation, but it is rooted in AKYISAN, Ancestral Religious Reversion, reverting back to our pure, pristine essence, meaning we're aligning our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. When you engage that process, then you can align with those who are seeking to do the same thing, and then you can reach them. You're on the same frequency. You can send that message through that worldwide web of energy, spiritually as well as physically, to connect with those who are open to hear. So, when we look at the term Ekku in ancient Kemet, it means illumination, shining, brilliance, splendor, and so forth. The ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated are therefore called Eku or Aku and Akut as a descriptive title. They're associated with stars that are shining and have illumination and splendor and so forth. It's not because it has anything to do with some extraterrestrial nonsense, because that has nothing to do with our culture. That's white nonsense. But when you see the stars in the darkness, illuminating the darkness, showing you and illuminating for you the path in the darkness so that you can move throughout the darkness without injury, the Nananom Nsamanfo in the spirit realm that you don't see apparently, you have to see spiritually. When you're in the darkness or blindness of ignorance, their illumination, their wisdom allows you to guide you, and you can make the proper moves, make the proper decisions in harmony with order, in alignment with divine order, or realign yourself when you get off track so you can navigate your way through the darkness until you can see, until you can illuminate yourself. When you can illuminate yourself, then you can make your own way through the darkness because you can light the path. They do the same thing physically at nighttime with the illumination of the stars, the same thing spiritually when you look directly at one of the Nsamanfo, the Aku, the Akut. Another reason they're called the illuminated ones or the illumined ones. I'm not talking about Illuminati nonsense. One of the reasons they're called the illumined ones or the shining ones and so forth, because when you deal with a spiritually cultivated ancestor or ancestress, one of the Nananom Nsamanfo, as they're called in Akan, or Egungun, they have a vibrant aura, a vibrant kahibit, a splendor-filled kahibit or a radiant kahibit or aura, just like someone physically. If they're physically strong and grounded, they have a strong, powerful, vibrant aura or kahibit. If someone is weak and sick, they have a more dim, small, weak kahibit or aura that is not very magnetic. But if they're strong and powerful and vibrant, then they have a radiant, powerful aura when they're alive physically, and even when they make their transition. Their spirit body has a vibrant, powerful, radiant, splendid aura. So literally, for those who are even a little bit clairvoyant, and most of us have some manner of clairvoyance from the time we're children, and which is sometimes suppressed because we're taught not to, or to be fearful of that. But children can see ancestral spirits walking around very often into adulthood. When you have even a small measure of clairvoyance, you can see those ancestral spirits who are vibrant and powerful and rooted and grounded. Those are the ones who have that radiant aura. So they are literally the quote-unquote shining ones, literally the illumined ones, the ones full of splendor and so forth. So that's another reason. There's an association with them, with the stars. When you go outside at night and the sky is full of stars, these shining individuals illuminating the path. You see certain ancestral spirits who have a weak, dim aura, then you have other ones who have a radiant, powerful, shining aura. They're literally the Aku, the shining ones, and they only have that capacity because the energy of Ra and Rayat is surging through them unfettered, free-flowing energy, because they live in harmony with divine order. The Ba'et, the divine living spirit, energy of fire, Ra and Rayat moving through them, is free-flowing and unfettered and radiant, and therefore they are radiant. So it's a reflection of divine order. So this is why they're called the shining ones, illuminated, and so forth. Aku or Ekum. So if you look in the Akan tradition and the Akan language, you have the term hum, and that's nasal hum, meaning to see, to perceive, having to do with wisdom, seeing, perception, seeing, and so forth. You have the term ehum, which is a term for, one of the terms for the brain. The ehum is that which is inside or within the brain. The ehum, the brain, mu, which is within the brain. Ehum, that which is inside the brain. The pith, that which is inner. The ehum is the brain within the brain, so to speak. Ehum means to perceive, to see. Ehum, HONHOM means the brain. HONHOM is that which is within the brain, the inner brain, so to speak. You also have HONHOM, which means to breathe. HONHOM also means to breathe. When somebody makes their transition, the spirit of the person, that HONHOM, as it's called, leaves the person, and it can take the form of a bird in the Akan tradition. What bird are we talking about? It's the same bird in ancient Kemet, the Eku bird, that crested habui, so-called crested ibis that we show as the image for the show, that bird of Tehuti and Seshat, the bird of wisdom, illumination, and so forth. That is the bird that the Akan people are actually talking about. The Ehum, the bird that's carried upon the breath, the bird that's connected to the Ehum, the brain within the brain, the pith within the pith, the inner essence, which is that brain within the brain, is talking about the physical seat of the Ehum, the capacity to see, to perceive. That inner brain, so to speak, that physical seat of the hum, the perception, and it's within the ehum, the brain, and it's carried and animated by the ehum, the breath, the spirit. That is the pineal gland. It's called the ehum or ehum in Akan. It is that body, the inner brain within the brain. It is the quote-unquote third eye. It gives you the capacity to see. So when we talk about illumination, we talk about the Aku, the divine serpent on the head of Ra, the radiant energy on the head of Ra and so forth, pointing towards the third eye region. That spirit, that Aku spirit, illuminated, shining, brilliant, wisdom, all of that, talking about the third eye, talking about wisdom, talking about perception, all of that is connected with Aku in ancient Kemet and Ehum and Ehum in Akan. So what we want to talk about with regard to that, to give some more detail, to give some more context to it, reading a text from the Runu Pert Imheru, the so-called book coming forth by David Misnomer, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, but it's the Runu Pert Imheru, and the specific, read a couple of them. That specific chapter 90, we're going to have chapter 92. Yes, we're going to have chapter 92. So, and this is specifically the Shefdu of Ani, the papyrus of Ani, that particular version of the Pert Imheru. So, this one is the chapter of not causing to be shut up the Ba, the divine living spirit of the person within the spirit realm. Now, it has two connotations, this particular chapter, and the same thing with everything happening in the Pert Imheru. Yes, it's talking about what takes place after death. When somebody makes their transition, their spirit separates from their body, what happens to the spirit? Before they can get to the ancestral realm, they may encounter and will encounter other discarnate spirits who have not made that smooth transition to the ancestral realm. So they can be pulled in different directions. It's like somebody leaves their house, and depending on the kind of neighborhood you're in, you could be surrounded by crackheads and other people who try to misdirect you or dissuade you from getting through all of that nonsense to get to your direction, get to your workplace or where you're trying to go. But if you're living in a different kind of neighborhood, you may not have any distractions. You can go directly to the people you're trying to connect with without any problem. But when you make your transition, you first sometimes might have to go through some of that, but you always, of course, are judged by the abosom. Your heart is placed on the scale against the feather of ma'at to see if you balance out your activity, your thoughts, intention, and action. The weighing of the heart happens after death, meaning that your spirit is searched by the abosom. The nature of your spirit, everything you've done, everything you've engaged in, just like you have a memory of everything that has taken place within your DNA, all of the injuries that have taken place within your body and the mutations and so forth are registered in your DNA. everything you've ever experienced, engaged in, is registered and written into your sum, written into your sahu, written into your spirit. And of course, it is registered within the ab, called Ebba in Akan, Ab, Abba, Inkamet, registered in the heart. So the heart is quote unquote placed on the scale, and is to be balanced out with the feather. If your spiritual heart that has registered all of your behaviors, all of your experiences and so forth, if it is heavy with disorder, perversity, you be engaged in disorder, anxiety, disorder, your heart becomes quote unquote heavy. Your spiritual heart is heavy with disorder, then the scales are tipped, and therefore you do not pass that test, simply meaning that when your spirit is searched out by the Abosom, searched out by the Nananom Nsamanfo, if you are found to be out of harmony with order, then you are repelled. No different than if physically you come in contact with somebody and they try to read you. They try to see what kind of person you are. If it seems like you're a criminal and you're talking a lot of nonsense on the surface, but there's something not right about you, they tell you to back up off them. They don't want to engage with you. They don't want to work with you. They don't want to hire you. They don't want to interact with you on any level because something is telling them there's something wrong with the individual. They search you out and they repel you, and then eventually they find out you're engaged in some kind of nonsense, some criminality. So just like our people search people out spiritually, intellectually, and psychologically, and mentally, and emotionally here, we make our transition. The Abosom, the force of nature, search us out. So we go before the 42 Abosom, the 42 deities who are the assessors of Ma'at, and go before these 42 divinities, 42 enunciations of Ma'at, when we invoke these Abosom by name, invoke them, align our spirits with theirs, and then confront or confess and say, we have not done this. They search the spirit out, search out the heart to see if it's true. You engage in disorder, you become repulsed by that. If you have aligned yourself with order, then you're drawn and you're connected with them. And then you can move to the ancestral realm in peace and harmony and so forth. So this is what's taking place after death, but it's also, of course, taking place during life. Every time you engage in a decision, you have to make a decision. You're going in one direction or have the possibility of going in another direction. Your heart is placed on the scale against the feather of Ma'at at that moment. If you live in harmony with order, make the right decision, then you balance out. If not, then your heart is consumed by Amut and so forth. So this is the context of these various readings. Yes, it takes place after death, but it also takes place throughout the course of everyday life, throughout the course of your various decisions that you have to make. So the chapter of not causing to be shut up, confined, the Ba, the divine living spirit of the person in the spirit realm. So this is what Osar Ani, the male who made his transition, his name was Ani in this particular papyrus. This is what he says as a spirit. Hail, exalted one, the one who is worshipped, the great one of the Bayou, the great one of the spirit, the Ba, the Bayou, plural, Ba-a-Shefit, which means the great Ram, a deity, the great Ram, mighty of terror, causing fear of himself, like the Abosom, crowned upon his mighty throne. So this is an invocation to that deity. Ba-a-Shef-Shefit. So he says, hail to this exalted one, the one who is adored, and he gives him all these various, recounts his various titles and his attributes. He's communicating with this divinity, the one who makes the way for the Aku. He says, you're the one who makes the way for the Aku, the intelligence. That intelligence within the person, the spiritual pineal gland for the person's illumination. One who makes the way for the Ba of myself. I am provided. I am vested. I am an Aku, an intelligence, an Aku who is vested, fully vested. I have made the way to the place within which Ra and Het Heru are. So it says at the end of this section, if this chapter is known, the person becomes an Aku, provided, or Aper, provided, or vested in the ancestral realm. And he is not shut out from any door in the ancestral realm in entering in and coming out. So if this chapter is read, this chapter where he invokes the divinity, the great divinity, the great Shef Shefi, if he invokes that divinity and he infuses his energy with that divinity, he says, I am an Aku, fully vested or provided. I've made the way to the place within which Ra and Het Heru are. If he invokes the divinity, if his spirit was pure and purified, the divinity accepts his invocation, aligns with him, empowers him, and protects him as he moves to the place where Ra and Het Heru are. That's why it says, if this chapter is known, the person becomes an Aku, one of the illuminated ancestresses and ancestors, vested or provided in the ancestral realm. And he's not shut out of any place in the ancestral realm. He's not repelled from any place in the ancestral realm. The term aper, plural aperu, meaning they always say provided. It means, aper means ornamented, vested, fully equipped, and so forth. When you see, for example, and we've talked about this in our broadcast, this is where you get the term Peru or Pelu. The Peru people, in Wolof is Pel, Pelu, Pulu, Pulu, Fula. Depending on the language and the different people, you have the Fula people, so-called Fulani, all across the continent. North Afurakani, West, Central, all the way to East. And depending on the dialect, there's the Fula, and so forth. In Wolof is Pel, Pelu. In ancient Kemet, there's the Aperu. Of course, the whites in our spring took this term, corrupted it, and then added it to a fictional cartoon character group of people, Hebrews, who never existed. Aperu means fully vested, fully provided, ornamented, and so forth. When you see, for example, the Wodabi people or some of the Fulani, and they're fully vested, fully ornamented, fully accoutramented, and so forth. That's one reason for that. But also fully vested, meaning vested with power, vested with intelligence, vested with divine wisdom. He has become an Aku, an illuminated one. Why? Because he purified himself. Because he purified himself on a regular basis. He engaged in ancestral religious practice while he was on earth, invoking the divinities, going to his shrines, pouring libation, aligning his thoughts, intentions, and actions with order, ritually incorporating law, ritually restoring balance on a regular basis, purifying his heart on a regular basis, and so forth. Because he did that, then he removed the debris, and he was able to fully receive the energy and wield the energy, the divine Ba, life force energy of Ra and Ra'et, moving through him. That free-flowing energy is not fettered. That's why the chapter is called, the chapter is not causing to be shut up, the Ba, the divine living spirit of a person. When he's engaged in divine order on a regular basis and seeking that on a regular basis with sincerity, not talking about achieving perfection immediately. This is our natural obligation to achieve and crystallize into perfection. That's our responsibility. That's our destiny. We become Nananom elders and eldresses in the world, in the family, in the clan. We crystallize into that perfection, meaning we engage the process of ritually incorporating law, ritually restoring balance on a consistent basis. Even before you get to that point, when you make mistakes, you ritually realign yourself. We're talking about normal mistakes, not criminality. Engage in criminality and insanity, then you rape and torture and all of that kind of nonsense. There's no realignment. You need to be executed, eradicated, eliminated, exterminated. But we're talking about normal people. You make normal mistakes, you realign yourself with order so you can keep yourself on track. You don't get off track and never get back on track. You veer off track, but then you ritually realign yourself and get back on track so you can keep going in the right direction and reach your destination. So, you keep the Ba pure by engaging in divine order ritual practice. And the Ba is pure, is freely flowing through your spirit body. That includes that seat of your intelligence, that illumination, the quote-unquote third eye region, the physical Aku, so-called pineal gland, the Ehun within the brain, as we say in our Khan tradition, the pith of the pith, the inner space within the brain, the Ehun, that place of Hu, illumination, perception, seeing, wisdom, and so forth. When you have all of that, because you're engaged in ritual practice on a regular basis, then you become fully vested. you become aped, fully vested, fully provided for. But when they say provided, the term is aped, meaning fully vested. He says, I am aped. I am fully vested. I am an aku, fully provided. And therefore, I have made the way to the place in which Ra and Het Heru are. That illumination is taking place. And because the person says that chapter, meaning they invoke Theobosom. It's not them reading a chapter. They're speaking the words. It's an incantation. They didn't have to read it. They knew this. This is their prayer. Just like you see somebody pull libation, they're not reading from a list. They may have read from it at first, but they memorized it. It's an invocation. These chapters in the Perkim Heru are invocations, ritual prayers. They simply wrote them out so that people later on could recall what they were doing. But the people knew the prayers, just like our people know prayers in Akan and Yoruba and everything else. They say them during their lifetimes. They say them, as spirits in the spirit realm. So for those who, if this chapter be known, or these sayings be known, or these sayings are uttered, invocation is known or effective, then the person becomes an aku, vested in the ancestral realm, and he is not shut out of any place of the ancestral realm because he is vested. Or coming in, entering in, and coming out of the new. They say the sky here, but the new, meaning as an aku or an akut, female. They're not shut out of any place of the ancestral realm. They can go back and forth within the ancestral realm, communicate with their relatives who have preceded them into the ancestral realm, communicate with them. They're not shut or repelled from any of them, but also from entering and coming out of the new. Here it says sky, but not sky. What it's talking about is such an ancestral spirit, such an aku, an illuminated one, an aku, illuminated one. They can go back and forth, entering and coming in and out of not the sky, but the new, meaning they can come from the ancestral realm and come to the physical realm, come to earth to communicate with their relatives. So when we pour libation at the Nkombre, the ancestral shrine, these ancestral spirits who are aku can show up. They're not barred or shut out from going back and forth from the physical realm to the spirit realm to assist us. Not only are they not barred from that, they have the power vested within them, which is the Ba, male, Ba'et, female, the energy of Ra and Ra'et. They have that power to move, but they also have the intelligence, the Aku, the illumination, the wisdom to give proper guidance. They are vested with power. They are vested with intelligence because they live in harmony with divine order on a regular basis. So they have insight, they have wisdom, and they have the obligation given to them by Ra and Ra'et to come and guide their relatives on earth. So this is what this chapter is dealing with. It makes them effective. And they can guide their children on earth effectively. And when we, their children on earth, engage in AKYISAN, Ancestral Religious Reversion, and return to our culture, and we align with these illumined ancestresses and ancestors, these aku and akut, then they can guide us. Even when we make mistakes, we can get back on track, restore that proper trajectory, because we're aligned by the aku, and they stimulate us to align with our own aku, our own internal source of wisdom. And therefore, we can become effective. And when we become effective, then we can affect others. We begin to oscillate, just like a tuning fork. You make it oscillate, you put another one near it, it will begin to oscillate as well at the same frequency. When you become illumined, when you become aku, when you become illumined elders, or even before you become an elders, you're living in harmony with order, you vibrate at that frequency like that tuning fork, then you begin to affect others, even if you haven't spoken directly to them. The spiritual emanating from you, anybody who's on that same frequency, they begin to vibrate and become stimulated, even if they're not even thinking about becoming stimulated. And then they're forced and urged and pushed towards activities and confirmation of the energy that they're feeling. Then they end up in a space where they come in contact with you or your information, and then they tell you, the Nsamanfo, or I was being pushed or led, and something led me here to get this information. I'm so glad I got it. This is a confirmation because you started that process. And their Nsamanfo pushed them in the right direction because when you started that process and projected that energy outward, they felt it, and then an opening occurred. There was some daylight, a window of opportunity, and the Abosom were able to enter into that window, the Nsamanfo able to enter into that window. The person may have been kind of comatose, blocking everything because they're watching reality TV or engaged in drug use or embracing white culture and fake religions and fake deities and fake prophets and everything else, and they shut out or ignore what the Nsamanfo and Abosom are telling them. They're getting the messages, but they are not embracing them. They get the messages, but then they're like, oh, I'm not supposed to listen to that. My pastor said that's the devil. I'm not supposed to listen to this because this culture says it's wrong to feel divine hate towards somebody, so I'm not supposed to feel that even though I keep getting these messages that it's divine. So they get the messages, but they reject it. But then when you begin to oscillate at that frequency of wisdom, and then you propel that kind of energy, and they begin to oscillate as well, whether they know it's coming from you or not, then they're stimulated. Their eyes open up for a second. They snap out of that coma for a second. They stop ignoring what they have been receiving, and the Nsamanfo and the Abosom, their messages come through, and it stimulates the person and affects the person in a positive fashion. And then they begin to follow those directions. So let's look at the next chapter. It goes into some more information that's related. This next chapter, it is the chapter of Tum to the Ba, divine living energy, and to the Kahibit, so-called aura. Also, sometimes they'll say dealing with the shadow of coming forth by day and of gaining power over the leg. So, and that is chapter 92. The other one was chapter 91, this is chapter 92. All right, so this is what Ani said. And of course, this is still with him, but also with us as well. He says, the place of restraint is open. That which is shut prostrate. The place of restraint is open to my Ba, my divine living energy dwelling within it. The eye of Heru I have bound, establishing splendors for illumination on the brow or the forehead of Ra. Are stretched out the steps, are lifted up the thigh. I have made or weighed that great. My members are vigorous. I am Heru, the avenger of his father Asa. I bring the Ururet crown upon his staff. Open is the way of the Bayou or the soul, Ba, plural. My Ba, it sees the Ntoroa, the great divinity within the boat of Ra on the day of Bayou or soul. My Ba is in the front among those who reckon year. Come has delivered for me my Ba, the eye of Heru, which establishes splendors or illumination on the forehead of Ra. So before we even get further, the Ba of the person is purified. The divine living energy of the person is purified. He had already established that when he went through the weighing of the heart. His Ba is pure because he engaged in purificatory ritual on a regular basis. Nananom, the same ancestral religious practice we engage in today in the Akan tradition, Yoruba, Efe, Kudu, Vodun, and so forth. The same ritual practices they engaged in then with the same exact deities by the same name. When he engaged that process throughout the course of his life, he purified himself. His Ba is powerful, it's unfettered, it's radiant, and therefore it stimulates his Aku, his illumination, his capacity to see through the darkness, see through the blindness, and so forth. He's a powerful one. His Ba is powerful, radiant. His Aku, his illumination, his intelligence is king. He says he can see, his Ba can see the great divinity, the Ntoroa, within the boat of Ra on that sacred day. His Ba is in the front among those who reckon years. His Ba has therefore delivered for him the eye of Heru, which is established with splendors or radiance on the forehead of Ra, on the brow of Ra. What is the brow of Ra? What are the splendors of the eye of Heru on the brow of Ra? So when you look at the king, You see right near the forehead, you will see either two cobras, Wachet and Nekabet, or the cobra and the vulture, still Wachet and Nekabet. You'll also see Ra. You'll see him with the radiant disc on his head, encircled by a serpent, and the serpent is right in between the eyebrows. The splendors, the radiance on the forehead of Ra, the eye of Heru, establishes those splendors. The specific eye that he's talking about, eye of Heru on the forehead of Ra, that radiant energy center. So when people engage in ritual practice at the shrine, you've seen that radiant center in the midst, right where the physical seat of the Aku, which is the pineal gland, is. You see that disc, you know what they're talking about. The so-called third eye. Okay, so then he says, not shut in my ba, not fettered or chained or bound up my kahibit, so-called shade or really are. Be there open away from my ba, from my kahibit. May it see the great divinity Ntoro'a within the shrine on the day of judgment of Bayu of soul, the words of Asa, the beings hidden in dwelling, fetterers of the limbs of Asar, fetterers of the Bayu, and of the Aku who shut in the shades or the auras of the deceased who can do evil to me, not may they do evil to me, turning away their path from me. Your heart is with you. My Ba and my Ku is vested against their passage. So there are spiritual forces that can cause problems for someone if they're not vested, if they're not fully vested, if they're not fully empowered, if their Ba is not radiant or their Ba'et is not radiant because they were not engaged in purificatory ritual. But when they were engaged in that, they were aligned with divine order. Now they have a Ba that's radiant, that's powerful, that's fire energy. And they have illumination and wisdom. They can overcome those fetters or those chains or those bonds because they have the eye of Heru that's established upon the brow of Ra in the head region and the center region. So they can see. And they can also affect. When they say the Aku or the Akit means the effective one, that's a translation that many of the so-called Egyptologists give the Aku or Ak, the effective ones. Why are you effective? They don't understand the capacity or the cosmology undergirding that effectiveness. We're talking about the cosmology that undergirds this effectiveness of the HONHOM, or the HONHOM as we call it in Akan. That effectiveness is born of the reality that the person has purified themselves, purified their body, they are radiant, they are powerful, and they are vested with wisdom and the capacity to see and influence others and be effective in their influence of others physically and spiritually. And as we said, from right where you are, you affect hundreds or thousands or even millions right where they are right now, effectively. So this is what he's dealing with. He's not shut in because he's radiant and fully vested. Those who would normally shutter or shut in the Ba of someone or the Kahibit of someone, the Aku of someone, they cannot shut him in. He says, may they not shut me in because, of course, I am fully vested. He then says, may I sit among the great ones who dwell in their seats or upon their throne. Not may restrain them, the fetterers, the limbs of Alsar, the fetterers of Bayu or souls who shut in the Kahibit to or the shades of the deceased. If this chapter be known, he comes forth by day, per f heru, and not is shut in his ba. So again, when he engages this ritual invocation to the Abosom, and you're not going to engage in this ritual invocation if you have not engaged in some purificatory practice with sincerity. You're not going to go before the Abosom and try to invoke them and pretend like everything is all right. And in reality, you have defilement within your system. You're engaged in lust and malice, and you're seeking to empower yourself, invoking the Abosom to try to empower yourself so you can use the energy that you think you're going to receive so you can control women and lust over women or control people's thoughts to take money from them and misuse them and so forth. You try to go before the Abosom with that kind of perversity, they repel you. But when you go before the Abosom and invoke them ritually, and you have purified yourself, then they receive that, they receive you, purify you, you become fully vested, and now you can be powerful and influential as well. All right. And we want one more that is directly related to that. We're going to check out, in 1 second. Yes, just one more small section. Chapter 74. So if you were looking in the Pertinent Meru, chapter 74 for this particular one. And it's directly related, of course, the chapter of passing through Amentet, which is the ancestral realm, and coming forth by day, Pertinent Meru. This is what Ani said. Open is Unu, shut is the head of Tahuti, perfect is the eye of Heru, the Ari Heru. I have delivered the eye of Heru, Aku, shining with splendors on the forehead or the brow of Ra, the father of the Ntoru, the divinity. I am Asar, like Asar, I am like Asar, the same, dwelling in Amentet. He's identifying himself with Asar, who became illumined. He became, of course, mummified, impervious to decay, a radiant, shining, brilliant, illumined, ancestral divinity. And he's saying, I am Asar, I'm like Asar, the same as Asar. I'm moved into the ancestral realm as well, the spirit realm, and I have become vested like Asar. And the greatest investment is that mummification, that wrapping, that investment there that makes you impervious to any form of decay, physically and spiritually. When you wrap yourself in the energy and power of the Abosom, you become impervious to decay or defilement. So he's become fully vested, like Asar. That's why he says, I am Asar, I am like Asar, the same as Asar, dwelling in Amentet. Doesn't mean he's saying he is Asar. He's like Asar, after his example. On his day. And then he says, I am Yah, meaning the moon. I am like the moon among the divinities. Of course, the moon is the illuminated disk at night, showing the pathway through the darkness. I am Yah, meaning the moon among the divinities. The Ntoru too. Of course, Yah, the fake deity Yah or Jah comes from Yah, the moon in ancient Kemet, deity in Kemet. Not do I come to an end. Stand up then, Heru. He has counted you among the divinities. So again, once again, he's talking about once he becomes fully vested, then he can be counted among the divinities in their company. He doesn't become a deity, but he functions in harmony with them. The Aku, the Akutu, if you look at the stars, for example, just as a schematic, you look at the moon divinity, the great, huge, you say, for example, the full moon, the great, huge, brilliant, luminous disk, eschewing the silvery, light, shining one. And then you have, from our vantage point, all of the various stars. So they look like tiny, little, shining, illuminate discs, and the moon is the great from our vantage point. He's identifying with Yah, the moon, the great illumined disc. The left eye of Heru is the moon. The right eye of Heru is the sun. So when he's talking about the eye of Heru, in this sense, he's talking about that left eye of Heru, which is the moon. And then he says, I am the moon, the Yah among the divinities. Not do I come to an end. Stand up then, Heru. He is counted among the divinities. If you look at the moon, the huge white disk, silvery disk, illuminating the darkness, all the various stars are the little moons, the little illuminated ones. Those are like the little ancestresses and ancestors who follow the great, big, huge, illuminated disk. They are counted amongst the divinities, so to speak. So the ancestresses and ancestors support what the great divinities direct us to do. So this is what he's talking about. And of course, we live this. So when we talk about this culture, when we read these texts, the reason why we can read these texts and give context to these texts is because we are part of that living culture. No matter what form it takes within your clan. The Akan tradition in North America, for example, as we've proven in our book, Hoodoo people, is the Hoodoo tradition. From the Akan term, Undu, which is medicine, root work, and so forth. The Yoruba tradition, Juju, in North America, Juju is a Yoruba term. That's the Yoruba tradition that was preserved for hundreds of years in North America. The Hoodoo tradition, the Akan religion, preserved for hundreds of years in North America. The Vodun tradition in Louisiana and other places is the Fawn and Eve tradition, preserved for hundreds of years in North America. The Grigri tradition is the Bambara tradition, preserved in North America for hundreds of years. So no matter what our tradition is, we live these principles. We deal with these illuminated ancestresses and ancestors. We see them, communicate with them. We deal with the forces in nature, plant life, animal life, and mineral life, the abosom that govern the mountains, rivers, oceans, the sun, moon, planets, black substance of space, thunder, lightning, and so forth. We still deal with these forces in nature, in our tradition. So when we read these texts, we know exactly what they're talking about because we live the culture. The ancestral religion is not based on the text. The texts are simply reflecting what we actually do. So we're not dependent on a text, but it's convenient for us to write a text, and we left it for our posterity so our people can see exactly what we were doing back then, and it conforms to and comports with what we live and experience today. So it's simply a confirmation of what we already do. So that's how we become aku. That means we become vested. We become vested with the power of the abosom, that radiant power that's moving throughout our bodies, that crest on the forehead of Ra and so forth, on the brow of Ra. We have that illumination, become vested in that wisdom, and then we become effective. And we can affect other people. And when you look at the work of people who are engaged in the ancestral religious practice in an authentic sense, you see they can affect people in their immediate vicinity, as well as affecting people and transforming and reforming lives wherever our people are in the world. So they're not sitting around waiting for an institution to be built, waiting for we have to do this first and have to do that, or start bragging about a little institution that they have built. How are you affecting people worldwide, wherever our people are, right where they are right now, transforming their lives totally, reforming their lives totally? If you're not engaged in authentic practice, you don't have that cosmological foundation or that energetic output to be able to be effective in transforming lives. So at some point, all you're doing is making people blind followers and regurgitating some of the misinformation you put out, and therefore, then they just follow along, and if they're gullible, then they say, oh, I've been transformed. But then they're a reflection of who you actually are. So all of your faults and perversities will begin to manifest with them as well, because they have been aligned with your nonsense. So let's look at, we have a call on the phone line. If you have any questions or comments, hit the number 1 on the phone line. If you have any questions or comments in the chat room, of course, you must log in as a user in order to interact in the chat room. For the individuals who came on a little bit later, we made an announcement early in the show. The date for the AKYISAN Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Ancestral Religious Reversion Conference. We're having that all-day conference in Washington, D.C. We have confirmed the date. We had to switch it from March 19th to March 20th. So it is March 20th, Washington, D.C., all-day conference. It's a private event that's open to Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people only, our people only. All of you are invited, but it's our people only, of course. Of course, it is a free event. Every time we do a presentation, no matter what city we're in, we do not charge our people an admissions fee to come and learn about their own ancestrally inherited, genetically inherited culture. We don't charge people for that, and we also give away a free book, one of our books, to everyone who attends. So they come to a free presentation, and they also walk away with a free copy of one of our books, notwithstanding whether they can afford a book or not. So we do that wherever we go. We've given away over 700 books physically to the community, but of course all 17 of our books The ebook versions are online for free anyway, so you can download those at any time. Again, that's dealing with that effectiveness, so we can transform our people wherever they are in the world. The ebook versions are free. You can download our 17 books at any time, 70-plus articles. We also have the softcover versions of our books that we print in-house on our own printers in color, and they range between $8 and $11, so you can order those as well. We have discounts for 30% off for multiple orders. But the same thing that we did with our Hoodoo Nation Festival in October, we'll be doing here with the HONHOM Ancestral Religious Reversion Conference on March 20th. So the new date, March 20th, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Check out the HONHOM page on our website. We updated the flyer, changed the date. That is a Sunday, AKYISAN, a Sunday. So remember, that's a Sunday, March 20th, Washington, D.C. 11 to 7, we'll have a number of presenters. We have 4 so far. We're going to have either 7 or 8. So continue to check the page. We also updated the HONHOM page on Facebook. So please share that information. If you had shared it already with some of your contacts, please share it again to let them know of the new date, which is March 20th. And then you'll also see the information for vending, as well as the information for the HONHOM. We will be publishing a journal for that conference. That journal, that book will be given away for free to everyone who attends the conference. It will have articles on ancestral religious culture and practice and cosmology. It will also have a list of businesses, organizations, and institutions in the community, those who are vending at the event, but also others who take out ads, who would like to promote their business, organization, and institution. So if you would like to take out an ad in the journal, again, go to the HONHOM page. It's a full 8.5 by 11 size, magazine size, full color book. A 1/4 page ad is $25. A half page ad is $35, and a full page ad is $50. So, and that book will be given away to everyone, so your information will be seen by thousands of people, of course. But the ebook version of the journal will be on our website as a free download. So we've had over 1.46 million people coming to our website over the past 12 months. So you will have millions of people seeing the information if you put an ad in the journal, whether it's an ad for your business, your organization, your institution, your study group, anything that's rooted in Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit culture in an authentic sense, serving the community in a positive capacity, or if you just want to support and want to place a 1/4 page ad or something just to support the work that we are doing, you can do that as well. But people will see that information. It will be free online, and then the softcover version will be given away. But then even after the conference, we'll be selling the softcover version as well, just like we sell the Hoodoo book, Hoodoo journal that we gave away at the Hoodoo Festival back in October. So that's the update we wanted to give everyone. All right, so we're going to take some of these phone calls. Okay, Michiawo on the phone line, number 3429. You had a question or a comment?
Yes, what's up, brother?
What's up?
First of all, I just want to thank you for everything you're doing. It's definitely powerful and it's divine and it's helping our people. And two quick questions. What are your thoughts on the SAR Set Society and the Tree of Life spiritual system? And second question is, what are your thoughts on a lot of people saying that we should move back to Africa? And just real quick, my thoughts on the move back to Africa thing is, like you say, if we're not following African, traditional African spiritual practices, no matter what land you're on, it's going to be disorder, whether it's Africa or not. So.
Right. Okay, so, yes, the first question you asked about the Al-Sara Set Society, so when you look in the Medu Neter series published by Rob Nefer Amen, there's a lot of good information in there, but then you also have to see where there are some discrepancies. So anything with any publication that you get or any information you get, you always, number one, you run it by your Nananom Nsamanfo, your ancestresses and ancestors, both of them that govern you, and so forth. So there are certain things that are more influenced by outside sources, even though he understands, of course, that, the whites in our spring corrupted our traditions and repackaged them, fragments of our traditions, and tried to represent them or represent them to us, like in Hinduism and Vedanta and all of that nonsense. So he recognizes that a couple of things that are not in alignment. So, for example, you look at Nebet Het and Het Heru are not two forms of the same divinity. They're two totally separate forces in nature. Just like he understands, of course, Het Heru is Oshun in the Yoruba tradition. She's Afi in the Akan tradition. Nebet Het is actually the wife of Set, of course, but she's Agberu, the female Orisha, the wife of Eshu in the Yoruba tradition. No Yoruba person would say Agberu and Oshun are just two forms of the same Orisha. They are two totally different divinities. She's Akua in Akan, the wife of Awuku, which is Nebet Het. And then, of course, Afi, or Cheche in Akan, is the divinity animating the planet Afi. So these are two different divinities, two different planets, Mercury and, Venus, or Akua and Afi. Yes, they have, relationships, just like your different organs in your body have relationships, but they're not, that doesn't mean they're the same organ. Same thing with, you'll have the eighth sphere, talk about Sebek. Of course, the planet Mercury in certain periods was called Sobek or Sobek. So this is where it gets the title Sobek. But then the representation is that of Anpu, not Sobek. So when they show the representation of the divinity, they show the representation of Anpu. And they say that Anpu and Apuwad is two speech centers in the brain, but then they collect them under Sobek. Sobek is a different deity. He's a crocodile divinity, the wife, the husband of the divinity Neat. So you have Sobek and Neat, which is a couple. Sobek is a crocodile divinity that retrieved the body of Alsar and carried his body out of the river, out of the water to the land, and we show an image of that when we talk about the origin of the term Kemet in the Akan language and so forth. Sobek also retrieved the hands of Heru, and the hands of Heru were cut off. So Sobek is a divinity. And sometimes it's called Sobek Ra. He's connected with that solar energy. So he's a divinity. Anpu is a different divinity. Apuwat is a different divinity. Set is a different divinity. They're not all the same manifestation of the same divinity. These are different deities. So they all try to force fit them into the eighth sphere. So there are certain things that are force fit to make it fit into that so-called tree of life system. You don't have to force everything into that 10-sphere system. But since they decide to use that structure, then they constrain themselves, and now they have to start making, concessions cosmologically to make these things fit. Sticking Shu and Tefnut in the second sphere connected with the Huti, but then where's Seshat and where's Ma'al without Ma'at? It's a lot of things that are force fit. So it's in and out. You have some good information, but then there are other things you have to, you can't close your eyes to. So that's what we're saying. The second question, some of our people, yes, are going to go to the continent, and we should be doing that. Some of our people will establish independent, the goal, of course, is to establish an independent and sovereign nation. In reality, the whites in our spring established Liberia and Sierra Leone, but they had political motivations, and they created chaos when they did that, and that was deliberate. And then the people were in conflict. Even when our people went to Liberia to repatriate, they became in conflict because of their mindset with the people who were already there. That was orchestrated by the whites in our spring. So, of course, we want to establish something independent, even before we get to something having an independent nation, even going to certain places and establishing, homes, businesses, communities, neighborhoods, cities, and so forth. Some of our people are going to engage that process. There's some people who will still be in the Western Hemisphere who won't be able to do that right away, or some people, because of their situation, they won't be able to do that. They may have at a certain age, or they have sick parents, or whatever it is, that they can't just get up and leave, and move to the continent. So they begin to establish independent spaces or zones right here. And in our Ojida Mind series, Purified Nation Afurakani and Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. Part 6 is called Kuro, talking about the establishment of independent community. We talk about the true historical precedent for that, where we established independent black towns prior to the end of enslavement, when we freed ourselves and established independent sovereign nations, as well as after enslavement. We forced them into enslavement. We established independent towns, incorporated our own towns, and controlled our own destiny in many places. And we talked about that reestablishment of that black town incorporation movement. So we should be engaged in that process. Wherever we are, we should be establishing independence wherever we are. That's the short term and midterm, and then long term for some of our people. But then some of our people, the short term, to repatriate to the continent and engage that community building, nation building process there. If you're not in the position to go there, then you need to engage that nation building process here. So that would be my answer to that.
Thank you, brother. Understood.
Okay. Merasa. Appreciate it. So, give me 1 second. Okay. So for the next call on the phone line, Michio on the phone line, you had a question or a comment?
Yes, Michio, to everyone this evening and to you, AKYISAN. I want to also say that, I really appreciate all that you do for us as a people. Madase, I thank you so much. And can you hear me?
Yes.
My question was, okay, good. My question was, I was listening to the video, I think I pronounced this right, it's Hufu Madru, examination. And
right.
In the video, I think you had said something about that we were not under any slavery for 400 years. A lot of us, we got that under being, well, like everything else. We just been told wrong. And so I do understand the part about in Africa, that in Ghana, that it was only controlled by British and Europeans for 55 years. Right, is what you said.
As far as once for example, in Ghana, the whites and offspring showed up in the 1470s, and they built a fort like 10 years later in the 1480s. But they were not able to take control, even though the British allied actually with the Fanti to wage war against the Asante a number of times, and they lost all those wars except for the last one, because the Asante nation had fallen into a civil war. So the whites and offspring did not annex the Asante Empire until 1901. So from the time they were there before enslavement began in 1470, all throughout the enslavement era, and afterwards, after it was over, they hit from the 1400s all the way up to the so-called 1800s and into 1901, the whites and offspring were not controlling the area. They didn't take control in the Fanti regions in the late 1800s, like the 1880s, and then amongst the Asante in the early 1900s. So they were not controlling the Akan area prior to enslavement, during the enslavement era, and after. After it was over, that's when they took over. That was in the early 1900s. Then, of course, Ghana got its independence in 1957. They were not the first nation to get their independence in sub-Saharan Afuraitkaitnit. They were the second. Actually, Sudan was the first in like 52 under a black leader. But, yeah, so they were in control for like 56 years as far as a colony, colonizing them. That 400-year period, of course, the whites and offspring put that nonsense in the Bible. And then the people in the Nation of Islam and the Moorish Science Temple and, so-called Hebrews and all these other foolish organizations, they repeat that 400-year refrain. We've been enslaved for 400 years. And know that people will be enslaved for 400, and we just keep saying 400 years, 400 years, 400 years. But our people were not enslaved for 400 years. It doesn't fit that little pseudo-prophecy. Where they get the 400 years from is the 400-year stele in ancient Kemet. So we did a broadcast on that.
Okay, I have to find that broadcast. But my question is, when the Atlantic slave trade, is that such thing as that, and when does that begin? Now I know you said in the Hufu Madu to calculate from 1865. So I'm still kind of stumped here with where does the Atlantic slave trade thing begin and end?
No, it was taking place. But what our point was is that the reason there's a political reason why they keep saying we have been enslaved and under the control of the white man for 400 years. So our people think that white people have been controlling our people for 400 years over here, as well as for 400 years on the continent. But when you look in West and Central Afuraitkaitnit, where the enslavement process happened, they were not controlling any of those nations during that 400-year period. What they were doing was, when some of our people were having military conflict, they would purchase the prisoners of war. They weren't able to just roll up on the continent and just beat our people down and snatch us up and drag us into enslavement. They weren't that powerful. They tried that, but they just weren't that powerful. So they had to wait for us to fight one another and then purchase the prisoners of war and then sell the prisoners of war into enslavement. So yes, that's what the quote-unquote Atlantic slave trade was. They were purchasing the prisoners of war as well as convicted felons and selling them. So they were sitting on the coast or sitting in their forts and so forth. Crackers couldn't hardly even come into the interior because the malaria would take them out. So they had to, capture. It was very rare that they were able to, run up on a village. And even if they did that, they had, traders, black traders, working along with them. So when they would capture the prisoners of war and sell them, then those would be the ones who would transported across the Atlantic. And, typically, like, for example, in North America, late, quote-unquote, 1500s into the 1600s is when that process began. And then so-called 1800s is when it ends. So it's like less than a 300-year period, basically. And very similar in the Caribbean and South America.
Okay. All right. So my question was, give and take, the time frame was about 200 to 300 years. Often,
right, depending on where you are, where the people were, because, they skew it by saying we were enslaved for 400 years as though it was one group of people who just snatched up like the biblical pseudo-Hebrew nonsense. But there were different people from different groups over the course. Okay. Some people, their group didn't get hit until the 1800s. Like some groups, they never got enslaved at all, and they were living in West Africa. They just fought the people off, and they never got caught up. Some people got caught up in the 1700s. Some people got caught up, and some of their people sold in the 1800s. Some people got sold in the 1600s, and it stopped in the 1800s. So it stopped in the 1700s. So it was varying, time frames for different people. So it doesn't fit into that 400-year narrative that they put forth.
Oh, all right. And then another thing about the slavery, were they really votes? A lot of people say there's no evidence of votes.
Right.
Even though
of course. Anytime when you hear people talking about there was no slave trade, there were no votes, these are all Negroes who worship the white Nile Spring. Many of them are into this pseudo-Moorish nonsense, so they're trying to pretend like all the blacks, there was no slave trade, or if there was enslavement, the vast majority of the people were already in America, and they really don't come from Afuraitkaitnit. You have Negroes who want to pretend like we don't come from the continent because they hate themselves. That's the vast majority. You have a small percentage who are just agents of the white Nile Spring, and they're spreading this misinformation through the agency of Moorishism and so-called Hebrewism and, Islam and everything else. The vast majority, deep within, we've been taught to hate ourselves. We still hate ourselves, so we're looking for any excuse to say we do not come from the continent. Of course, it's all nonsense. All black people come from Afuraitkaitnit. We migrated away, some thousands of years ago and some more recently. But even those of us who came here a few thousands of years ago, who were here before the whites and our offspring, what these people don't understand and doesn't figure into their pseudo-analysis, because they're blinded by that self-hate and they're looking for any excuse to say they're not from the continent. What they don't realize is that, yes, some of our people were here before the Asians came, before the Europeans came, but when the Asians and Europeans came, and especially in the so-called, 1500s, 1600s, they brought those diseases with them. And over here in North, Central, and South America, the Caribbean, we were hit with plague, just like the Black Death in Europe that wiped out between 1/3 and 1/2 of the population, millions within 5 years, decimated Europe. But the same thing happened over here, and the records are there. The populations were decimated. So the reason they started bringing people over on boats and so forth is because the populations were decimated with the plague. Millions of people were wiped out within a very short time. So there weren't enough people to force into enslavement, even if they wanted to do so, because the people had been decimated. So they started bringing our people. So anytime people are talking that nonsense about either slavery didn't happen or it was only a 1/10 of a percentage of what they say, all of these Negroes are just self-hating, and they're embracing foolish information.
Okay, so the good ship Jesus was a real ship too. Right. That's valuable. Yeah. Okay. All right, moving on. The word netter, netteret, and neteru, is that word pertaining to God and goddesses, or is it?
Yeah, it is. And of course, you have some. So if you look in our book, well, in fact, we did a broadcast specifically on the term ntoro and the origin of the term and what it actually means. And of course, we still use that term in Akan. For example, they'll spell it NTR in the Medutu, the hieroglyphs. People don't know if it's netter or nutur, or they don't know how to pronounce it because the vowels aren't listed, but we still use the term as ntoro in Akan. Ntoro, which is a divinity. The descriptive titles of ntoro is Edjabosom, the father's deity that you inherit directly from your patric clan. The ntoro, or nton, is the Abusiabosom, the divinity you inherit from your mother's matric clan, the deity that communicates with us, that possesses our people. There's a lot of Negroes who talk about atheism and all this stupidity, once again, promoting false information, promoting the idiocy of the whites and their offspring because of self-hatred, some because they're agents, for others, the majority because of self-hatred. The whites and their offspring told them that they cannot have any gods or goddesses. They made them fearful of even to use the term God or goddess or the term religion. The whites and their offspring have made them believe that that's an inferior term and so forth, so they're scared to use it now. And now they want to say, oh, no, we didn't believe any gods or goddesses. These were just principles. These were just anthropomorphized expressions of energy or ashe. That's when you know Negroes do not know what they're talking about at all. They're not scholars. They have no knowledge of what they're talking about. We have a direct, real, living culture. And, of course, in our book, Enidaho, we broke down the etymology of the term God, which until we put that information out, it had not been properly examined by any black or white scholar. And we showed the term God comes from the term Gan, which is a title of Amin and Aminet, Ganga Ur and Ganga Uri in ancient Kemet. It does mean to pour and invoke and so forth, but it's coming from a cosmological foundation. It's talking about the sound, the sacred animal totem of Amin and Aminet makes when they're engaged in the ritual process. So if you look in the Anidaho book, one of our publications, we talk about the origin of the term God, and in the broadcast, Netter, Ntoro, the origin and meaning of the name, Intiar or Netter. But it means God or goddess, force in nature, a male or female, spiritual, divine spirit force in creation that we communicate with, that communicates with us, that possesses our people, speaks directly to our people through ritual processes and so forth.
Okay, I just have one more question. I know there's others on the line. Are we in the age of Aquarius, or is that just something else that you said?
Okay, so the zodiac, and we actually did a broadcast, the real zodiac. We did it last year, but then we just recently posted the YouTube version of it just a few days ago, even though it's, the Blog Talk archive has been there, but sometimes people just want to see it on YouTube, or it's easier for them to watch it on YouTube instead of Blog Talk. So the whole notion of a zodiac, of course, comes directly from our people. There are different ages. There's a 26,000-year cycle, equinoctial point of the sun at the spring equinox moves through these different ages. It's not, each age is exactly 2,160 years. It's not that way. In reality, if you look at the astronomical zodiac, because the White Nile Spring had, placed things in averages, so they averaged out that 26,000-year cycle and said, well, each constellation is 2,160 years, but it doesn't average out exactly like that. So in reality, if you look at where the equinoctial point of the sun is at the spring equinox today, it is still in the age or the constellation of the two fish in ancient Kemet called An and Remi, the White Nile Spring called Pisces. And it will not move into Aquarius, which is the water bearer. You should see Aquarius holding the two vessels pouring water, or sometimes one vessel and pouring water. That's actually Hapi, the deity Hapi, the spirit of the Nile River. And you see him with two vessels pouring water out into the river. That's where they stole Aquarius, the water bearer, pouring the water out. So that's really Hapi. The equinoctial point of the sun will not move into the constellation of Hapi, so-called Aquarius, until about 600 years from now. So we're nowhere near the age of Aquarius. But because our people are following, some new age cracker, they just repeat what the cracker said. But if anybody looks astronomically of where we are right now, we're about 600 years away from the age of Aquarius or Hapi.
Okay. All right. Madase. Thank you.
Okay. Yeni Aseda, we appreciate the call. So, all right, so we have a few more calls, but we want to say before that on the broadcast, a little bit over 5 minutes left on the broadcast as far as online. So if you are listening online in about 5.5 minutes, it will cut off. If you want to listen beyond 11:30, then you must get on the phone line, because the people who are on the phone will still be able to hear. The people online, it will cut off automatically. So you have to call in within the next 5 minutes. So the call-in number is 657-383-0635. 657-383-035. And that way you can get on the phone line. For those who are not able to stay, again, check out the HONHOM page so you can see the updated flyer for the Ancestral Religious Reversion Conference. We look forward to connecting with you in person if you can make it out to D.C. We also have, we just talked about the Anidaho book. That's one of the books we have published, talking about the origin of the term God, the origin of the term Nega, Nehesu, and Nkoso. Of course, Nega does not mean God. It is not the origin of the term nigga. Naga is not the origin of the term nigga. Nature is not the origin of the term Njur, nigger, and Ngur or Nganga Ur is not the origin of the term nigger. So we go into detail about that. We also talk about the origin of the term God, and we also give the etymological origin of the term Negro, which comes from Nek in Proto-Indo-European languages, which comes from ancient Kemet, Nek, or Nekal, which means foes or enemies who are crushed or beaten to death. So we show that in the Medusa and show the cosmology that gives birth to that. We also show the cosmology, the Amen and Amenet, that gives birth to the term Gan or Ganga-Ur, and the great Gan becomes the great God and all of that. The origin of the term Naga, the origin of the term Negus, and all of that. So Anidaho, all of that is in that book. And that's one of our 17 books. So when you go to our HONHOM page, our publications page, again, we have 17 books. The ebook versions you can download immediately for free at any time. If you would like the softcover versions, they range between $8 And then we have discounts. For example, the first 5 books, which are foundational, 20% off. So you get those first 5 books for $40. And any order of 10 books or more is automatically 30% off. So some people order the whole 17-book set. Some people order the first 10. For example, the first 10 books is $66. So you'll see that on the site. You'll see the 30% off for those multiple orders. And then you'll see the single orders as well, ranging between $8 and $11. So I'm going to get back on the phone line. Okay, Michelle on the phone line, number 8812. You had a question or a comment?
Yes, how you doing?
I'm good.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I had a couple of questions. My first question is, where can I find, like, the Ankin prayers to get to, like, the Aku, if I'm saying it right? Like, you know, to practice that. Where can I find those prayers? And my second question would be, like, since I'm just now starting to study, like, where do I start? It's just so much to take in. Where do I start at? And thirdly, I practice hoodoo, and I'm into herbs and, you know, root working. But I was wondering, like, would there be a disorder to charge for my roots?
Okay. So first question you said about the Aku. Now, we were reading from a couple of texts, like chapter 91 in the Persian Haru and chapter 92. So you can find those. And chapter 91, 92 in the Papyrus of Ani. And if you need some other references, just send me an email. And I can find some links for you that's direct to that. But when you talk about where to start in the beginning and everything, if you go to our HONHOM page, the publications page, the way we list the books, we list them in order from, you know, we always recommend the Cuckoo Ancestral Jurisdiction first, so you can download and listen to that because it's the audio, the whole audio book, but then we actually have the transcript of the book you can read as well, but we always recommend people listen first. We also have a video of the audio book, so you can just listen to that. But starting with that, and then they're in order. Whether you go to the publications page, you see them in order like that, or we also have a fake coup page, which is, it says Nananom Study Group, Ancestral Religion Study Group page, and we have that curriculum laid out on that page, all the links in order from the beginning, to start from the beginning. So we have that there. And if you want the direct links, you can send me an email. We can send the direct links, but it's either go to the publications page on the website or the Ancestral Religion Study Group page on the website. The publications page is NHOMA, NHOMA, NHOMA page. NHOMA means books or publications. And the FEKU page, the Ancestral Religion Study Group, FEKUW, FEKU, which means group or association. So that's the reason we call it the Ancestral Religion Study Group page. Either one of those pages, you'll see the books listed in order. So just you can check out that way. And the next question you had, you said you practice hoodoo, but then you also asked about, did you ask about a shrine, I think you said? Or
no, I practice hoodoo, and you know I do root work, but I charge. But I was wondering, would there be a disorder? And I have a lot of people that comes to me, like regular clients, that comes back and they, you know, people give me testimonials. They tell me that you know, the herbs that I create in the baths and stuff that I create for them are very effective, but I charge for it. And I just don't want to put out bad energy or, you know, trying to gain off my people or anything like that. It does take energy to do herbal magic and stuff like that, but, you know, I do charge for it, and I don't know if that would be, you know, unpleasing to the ancestors or what, you know, so that's something I'm struggling with. And then just like knowing where to start and studying Kemet, and, you know, I'm just dealing with a lot of stuff over here.
Okay. So now that's what I meant to say. One of the books that you'll find is our book called Hoodoo People, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit Africans in North America, Akan, custodians of hoodoo from ancient hoodoo in Dunu land, Kanit, Nubia. So we show that the term hoodoo is found in the Akan language, meaning root work and root medicine and conjure and all of that. We also show the term Kanche, which means to invoke through incantations the divinities. But then we also show the term Undu comes from ancient Kemet. And Kanit, Nubia. One of the titles of ancient Nubia is the Undu land, and the people called the Undu people. So we show the direct connection from ancient Nubia through West Afurakai right into North America. We still use the exact same terms for the same thing. So, and that'll give you some context, connecting ancient Kanat, Nubia, ancient Kemet, Ghana, Ivory Coast, as well as North America, for everything you're doing, root work, conjure, root medicine, root doctors. We have the terms Oduyefo and Oduma. For Oduma are the Oduma people, the medicine people, root working people, root doctors, and Oduma people became the Hoodoo Ma or Hoodoo man and Hoodoo woman in English. We're using the exact same terms we've always used. So we're going into detail about that. So you'll have that connection. And when we talked about the curriculum starting off, yes, you'll learn the cosmological origin of creation, Amen, Amenet, all of that, all the way coming to the present. So we start from the beginning. When it comes to charging, we did an article and a broadcast associated with that. And when you say you've been struggling with that, that's a good thing that you've struggled with it, because your crop is telling you certain things. You halfway in and halfway out. You know there's something to it, but then maybe the way you felt like you were going about it may not be totally correct. You're doing good work, and people are coming, and you know, you have testimonies of that. So our approach is that we do the work. And if we do the work with sincerity and with effectiveness, as we're talking about, and apparently you're doing the work with effectiveness, then the people will naturally and organically seek to support what you're doing. So it's similar to, if your car is not working and somebody says they're going to fix the car, fix the engine, they better fix the engine first. And if they fix the engine and now you can drive around, you are grateful for that and you will compensate them because it worked, as opposed to you paying them and then, it may not work. So it's a similar thing. The organic way is to do the work that you in the world to do, execute your function that you were put in this world to execute. And when you move in that direction, then you will draw people who need that work. They see its effectiveness, and they will seek to do what they can to support you so that you can continue to do that kind of work because they know it's needed, they know it's valuable, they know it's effective. So it's just a transformation in the approach.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Oh, and as far as I heard you say during the broadcast that about it was certain prayers that the Akan people did when they was in the physical. Where can I find those prayers?
Okay, so I'll if you look when you go to the website, there's a couple of, like, for example, we did one. There's a document that says a sample prayer in Kemet using the Akan language to vocalize, because the language of ancient Kemet, due to the hieroglyphs, sometimes they write certain words without vowels. But if you look at the languages all across the continent, we have the vowels because we're speaking the same language with the same people. We just went to different areas. So whether it's Akan or Yoruba, or Ewe, or Fon, or whatever it is, we're speaking the same language. So we use the Akan language with the proper vocalization, the proper vowels and all of that. So we composed a basic prayer that any of our people can use in the language of ancient Kemet, calling on the various divinities from Amen and Amenet and Ra and Rad and so forth, and the Aku and Akut, the Ancestresses and Ancestors. So just in case, if people don't know exactly what ancestral group they come from, you can go back to that parent language of ancient Kemet, going back tens of thousands of years, because that's the parent from which we come from. And our ancestresses and ancestors of ancient Kanit and Kemet, Nubian Kemet, they are our great-great-great-grandparents. And then our great-great-grandparents are the ones from West Afuraitkaitnit and Central and South, from where we were brought recently. So we're all connected. Just like you have parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents. So your great-great-great-grandparents from Afuraitkaitnit, Nubia, and Kemet. You can utilize that language, and it is their responsibility, their obligation to direct you as to what group you come from. If you're from the Congo, if you're Yoruba, if you're Akan, if you're Fula, Basa, whatever you are, then they would direct you towards that. So you can utilize that ancient language first, and they will direct you as to who you are. And then once you find out from them who you are and it's confirmed, then you can start studying that language. They tell you that you're Basa from Liberia, then you start learning about the Basa language and include that in your ritual invocation. Or if you somebody found out they were Fon or Yoruba or Fula, then they will learn about that language and incorporate it into their ritual invocation. So we have a prayer composed in the language, some background information, and also an audio link in the document so you can hear the prayer being said. So, and that's on the front page. And you can send us an email as well if you want the direct link. If you don't see it right away, because there's a lot of information on the page, and we can send that directly to you.
Are you on Facebook? I mean, I got the invite from my sister in the African Alliance, so I got the invite. But I just don't know what page to find you on. Like, are you on Facebook? Is that your page?
Oh, yeah. So if you type in Kwesi Akan on Facebook, KWESI, Kwesi, and Akan is AKHAN, we're on Facebook.
Thank you so much. You've been a blessing. Thank you.
Okay, Medase, we appreciate the call.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we let's see real quick. All right, we got a few more calls. Okay, Michiobo on the phone line, number 7871. You had a question or a comment?
Yeah, greetings, Brother Kwesi. The caller last time, I think we got disconnected.
Yes, it cut off last night.
That's right.
After the overtime period, they cut off at a certain point.
Okay, well, I was on the phone line, but anyway, right. That's just another glitch there, I guess, on the line.
Well, but what happens is they give you a little overtime. Like once the normal broadcast cuts off, they give you like about an hour of overtime. But once you get to a certain point, then it just automatically cuts off, even for the people on the phone. So that's what happened last night. Yeah.
Okay, got you. Yeah, thanks for the presentation tonight. I got the application email this evening. I'll be filling that out. Thank you for the expedient response. Two comments and a question. First comment was about the confessions of Ma'at, the 42 confessions, comparing those parents would want to recognize, using the idea of the 10 Commandments and thou shalt not as opposed to, I have not. When we use that, here in this society, basically, that I have not, children are bound to reject that, immediately. And the results are being clear. You can't tell a child that they shall not. They're bound to break the rules. But when you enforce it into the child, it's on them. I have not. You'll get a better human being in the long run. And the comment also on, you were talking about the inventors, the computer, the cell phone inventors, those brothers, of course, and many, many other inventions that our people have come up with. But one of the interesting ones, if you may already be aware of, is at the Temple of Edfu. It's the microprocessor architecture of Intel, the Intel Corporation. If you compare that temple next to the Temple of Edfu, it's an exact replica. It's totally, there's no mistake here. When they try to get around that, and just analyzing this, you'll see. Of course, this processor, that's what, that's the brain of the computer motherboard, the CPU, that makes all these machines work. But so what the oppressor, of course, what the oppressor did was took that architecture, seduced it into silicon, and of course used it to run these computers. But now the point is, what does that mean for us, being that they've obviously copied our temple that we built? But now we know these things, these chips run on electric circuits. So what makes them run, of course, is the copper wiring that's embedded in these silicon chips. But what does it mean at the Temple of Edfu, this architecture, or any temple or our own shrines? Of course, we are the electric circuits, just on a grand scale. I hope folks that haven't researched this will take it in mind, because again, taking our culture, miniaturizing it, if you will, and using it for follies, compared to what we've done and what we can do. And then you were speaking on the stars and the celestial. The sister was talking about the astrology. I was wondering, there was a brother named Naba, the Earth Center, who passed. He was a Dogon priest here back as of 4 or 5 years ago. But now he gave information on the Dakins, 36 Dakins. Do you have any input on that?
Yes. So, I've seen that aerial. Sometimes they would show that aerial shot of the groundwork of the temple and the temple complex. And I've seen people put an aerial shot of that bird's eye view, next to the computer motherboard. So if you Google,
if you Google, it used to be there on Haru Inside, like Intel slogan was Intel Inside. If you Google Haru Inside or Horus Inside, I think that'll come up. Just an interesting note when you're talking about those inventors, the brothers who have developed these technologies, but we had developed on a grand scale years and years before.
Right. Now you mentioned the Earth Center, and they have they're using what they would call a sidereal calendar.
The sidereal. Yeah.
On one hand, what they're using is sort of a sidereal calendar. On the other hand, they're using the civil calendar of ancient Kemet, in a sense, because they're using just like today, the Coptic calendar, Ethiopic calendar, they're using the basic same civil calendar. They never stopped using it. So 360 days plus the 5 epigomenal days dedicated to Osar and Oset and Heru-Ur and Set and Nebuchadnezzar. So 365-day year. So they're incorporating some of that. They associate certain deities with, the months and so forth. But at the same time, Naba, and I knew that person, a number of years ago. He was married to a cracker. They, embraced the wife and offspring in
I wasn't
the culture.
Aware of that.
Oh, yeah, he was married to one of them. A lot of misinformation they were putting out. So it was in and out. Certain things they'll get directly from certain sects, certain things they would not. Certain things he would say he learned directly from the bush, but even when I had interacted with him, he was asking me, he was looking for a way to spell the name of the divinity, Akeru, because he didn't know how to spell her name, so he was going through all of his books on hieroglyphics, and he asked me to look through some because he knew I studied the language, because he didn't know how to spell it. And one of his books that he thought the name was in there spelled properly, he didn't have with him. He left when he moved away into a different state, so his books were in storage somewhere. And he was like, if it's spelled wrong, then what's going to happen is people who know how to really spell it are going to point it out if I publish it, so I want to spell it correctly. So people don't know that kind of background. So when he comes out and says, I learned all of this information in the bush, he was studying the same Egyptological books that everybody else was looking at that particular time. And then, of course, saw that there was, connections between, the Goromanchi people and other people as well. Just like, we can show the connection between the Akan tradition. Other people can show the connection between the Bakongo and the Fawn and Wolof and everything else. So he wasn't learning the Medusa in the bush. He was reading those, hieroglyphic books. And he didn't do an etymological breakdown or, so, for example, if we show a number of words in the Twi language and the cosmological foundation of these different aspects of the spiritual anatomy in the Twi language and show them in the culture and in the, lore of the culture and then show them in ancient Kemet, he wasn't doing all of that. He was just showing that, this comes from our people. So a lot of people don't know about that real deal. And also if they were incorporating the whites in their offspring, so it's a lot of misinformation coming out of that group.
Okay, because looking at, compared, the only thing as far as I got with their program was comparing the Dakins to the Europeans or the whites and their comparison, which was different than his, and I was assuming that his information was accurate. And but I was just leading up to the question just was, is there any connection in your research with the Dakins as far as any in relationship to our language, to as any devotion to it, in a religious sense?
Well, yes. So when they talk about that calendar and the 36 Dakins and so forth, in ancient Kemet you have those 36 constellations.
Yes.
Every 10 days, different constellation manifests. So that's 10 times 36, 360. So that's the 360 days, and then the 5 days intercalary days, the epigominal days at the end of that cycle creates 365-day cycle. In that particular civil calendar, it's off by a quarter of a day, but then they also had the calendar connected with Sepasset, so-called Sirius or Sothic calendar, where it was based on when Sirius would rise, and that's a direct, accurate 365-and-a-quarter-day calendar. So they had both running at the same time. So but the 36 Decans, they're connected to the 36 constellations. So and there are deities that govern the 36 constellations. So if you look in like the star maps of Sin and Mut and other places, you'll see those 36 Decans and so forth. Okay,
and then that then the in other words, their relationship, the meaning, because of the understanding they had moved that it was moved from the temple of Osar and then put in Dendera, and why the effort, why would they move, and even the work, there's also a linear style of the zodiac, and then of course the circular one, where the circle, the zoo, which the circle of animals, which where I guess the name derives from. I was just wondering if there was any, the connection, because they are Haru, the gods and the gods and goddesses. They're on those rafts. When you look at them pictorially, and it's just like it's telling us something. And by them being 360, 40 in every 40 minutes. I was doing some math on it. I was just pondering, any impact on the, on the religious aspect. But it's not important. I'll just keep it in mind.
No, I understand. And yes, the constellations that govern, just like a planet or ocean or the river or Earth Mother, the different aspects of creation are governed by the Abosom, the Orisha. The same thing with those constellations. They put forth energy. They project energy towards the Earth. They are physical seats of specific divinities. So yes, they have a direct correlation.
Impact.
There's All-Star operating through the star system Sa, or Orion, Offset operating through Sepasset. So that's their stellar shrine. And then they can operate through the moon as well. That's the lunar shrine for them. And on Earth, the black soil substance and the river water, that's their earthly shrine. And then they have shrines within our body. So on every level, Yabosom, the Orisha, the Vodou operate. Stellar, lunar, solar, earthly, physical body, and divisions of our spirit.
Okay, great, brother. Thanks for the info. I'll be tuning in tomorrow night on the Economics Show. And thanks again for the program.
Okay, Medase. We appreciate the call. Okay, so we have just a few minutes left. So we'll take one more call because, like last night, once you get to a certain point close to that 3-hour mark, then Blog Talk will just automatically cut off the broadcast. So, Michiawa on the phone line. You had a question or a comment?
How you doing? Good evening, Brother Kwesi. I think your work is you connect the dots. I've been considering studying history for a while, and your work just connects the dots on a lot of things. And I was wondering, as I'm a grown man, and in school we never learn about the Arab slave trade. We never learn about Leopold, who was like a Hitler for people in the Congo. We never learn these things, what they did us and things like that. And I'm wondering, why do you think that's the case? And the other thing I want to ask you about is that we all know that the African people are already here on what we call the United States in this area for at least thousands of years before anyone else came here. I want to know what happened to the Olmec people as well. And the last thing in the news, they said that they found a cell phone in some place called Samaria, a cell phone that looked like Nokia or something like that, some type of cell phone. It was in the news yesterday, and I was wondering if this is some type of fictitious way to try to say. They say it's millions of years old, or is it some type of fictitious way to say that they've discovered something new, or is it just like it's a hoax, or is there some merit to it?
Right. So, yes. So, taking that first, yes, they will. They're always floating some little misinformation to try to sensationalize certain things because they know. For example, some of our people will go along with Christianity, but then you have a small percentage who won't go along with that misinformation. So then they'll try to capture some of those people with Islam or Judaism or Hinduism or something like that. Some of our people won't go for that. Then they'll try to capture some of our people with atheism, because they're all really the same fake tradition. Some of our people won't go for that. So then they'll try to capture the other people who won't go for any of that with extraterrestrial or anything sensational. They're always trying to figure out a way to capture everybody with misinformation. So they'll try to sensationalize things and say it's coming from another world, or they'll try to say that, somehow they created something and, then they disappeared and it was left, and then the black people came later and found it. Always trying to sensationalize. But anything that comes out, we never accept what the whites and their offspring say. If we cannot verify and prove it, then we reject it. So if it can be scrutinized and proven, then we don't entertain it. And then that goes to what the first question you had. Why don't they teach these things, for example, about Leopold killing 10, 15 million black people in the Congo and all the different things they do not teach? Because they can train you up in nonsense for years, and then one lesson in truthfully triggers your ancestral memory and triggers the reality that you understand that these are spirits of disorder that are to be divinely hated and eradicated, exterminated, and that will turn you on to your ancestresses and ancestors, and you'll begin self-reversionalization, as we talked about last week, and seek to begin to implement the remedy to eradicate our enemies. So they know that divine hate is within you, that divine immune system that you have is ready. They're always trying to keep us away from that, to ignore. They can't stop communication from the Abosom. They can't stop communication from the Nsamanfo. The best they can do is have us say, yes, we can hear that and we feel that, but we're going to ignore it because we believe that the communication that we just heard, or the urges that we felt to eradicate our enemy, is actually the devil, or it's just me having a psychological issue. They can't stop it from coming, so the best thing they can do is try to make you not obey it or listen to it or mischaracterize it or take it out of context. So they don't want to tell you anything that will stir up that fire within you. So they hide all of that information. They'll also hide the information about the Barbary Coast slave trade, where black people who were brainwashed with Islam as well as white Arabs were enslaving Europeans from the 16th to the 19th so-called century. That whole period that we were being enslaved over there, they were enslaving white Christians throughout the Mediterranean for over 300 years. So they don't want to tell people that, because then it deflates that pseudo veneer of invincibility, or that pseudo superiority they would like to project. When people find out, black people were enslaving white Christians for 300 years at the same time white people were enslaving black people over here for 300 years, then it changes the mindset. People start feeling more confident. So they're, it's calculated. They want to make sure nothing gets into your sphere of awareness that will trigger your ancestral memory, and number one, primarily trigger that force within you that will make you incline towards the eradication of our enemies. So that's the key there. When it comes to what happened to the Olmecs and different people, so we come over here thousands of years ago before the whites and offspring existed on Earth. We were already over here, of course. Tens of thousands of years. Living here, eventually, building pyramids and everything else. But even before building pyramids, we were over here. So eventually, the Asians come and invade. Of course, there's archaeological evidence showing what our people already knew, that the Asians began to attack our people, wage war against our people, so we were fighting the Asians, so-called Siberians and so forth. Eventually, the Europeans, of course, Europeans and Asians are really the same people. The Western Eurasians are Europeans. The Eastern Eurasians are, Asian. So they come over, but they bring, as we said earlier, the diseases. So check out, research the plague, the Black Death, the bubonic plague in North America, Central America, South America during that time, and see how millions of people were decimated. This is what really took place. It wasn't like the White Nile Spring was so powerful that they just came over here and started stomping people. It was the disease that they brought, their filthiness, their syphilis and smallpox and everything else. And the plague, that's what took the people out. It wasn't their military prowess. So check out the information with regard to the plague in the Americas.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. So, Merase, we appreciate the call. And so, so it'll cut off in a couple of minutes. So, as a matter of fact, you'll see in one of these places, they'll say the Native American depopulation occurred during the contact period, causing the Native American population size to decline from between 1 to 18 million, before European contact, to an estimated 530,000 by 1900. So there are millions, and of course they're misrepresenting, because they'll call Asians, Native Americans, and all of that. Millions of people were taken out by the plague. So this is why they started bringing our people over here. So again, Yedase, we thank you for tuning in to the broadcast, and Yebeshiabio, we will meet again. That's all.